going to open the Architectural Board of Review agenda for June 26, 2023, and start with a roll call, please.
Thank you. Chair Moore?
Here.
Vice Chair Six?
Here.
Board Member Anderson?
Here.
Board Member Noon?
Here.
Board Member Whalen?
Here.
We have a quorum. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Go to public comment. Do we have anyone that would like to address the board?
Thank you, Chair Moore. I'll go ahead and start with in-person public comment. So at this time, I haven't received any speaker slips, but just as a reminder, if anyone wishes to speak in person, you can fill out a speaker slip by the back door. Seeing no one move to speak, I'll go ahead and move to virtual public comment. If you wish to speak on Zoom at this time, you can raise your hand and I'll call on you. I don't see any hands raised on Zoom, and we also did not receive any general written correspondence, so I'll turn it back over to you, Chair Moore.
Okay, thank you. We'll close public comment and go to approval of the minutes from May 30th. Do we have any comments, edits, etc.?
Sorry, was that May 30th?
Yes.
Yes, I have one comment, please.
Okay.
On number 6, 523 West Gutierrez. I'd like to clarify my comment. I believe it's about the third sentence. Should be something akin of breaking up the length of the long linear railings and fascias would better serve the overall design.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
A second.
Okay. With that change, we can take our vote.
Chair Moore?
Yes.
Vice Chair Six?
Yes.
Board Member Anderson?
Yes.
Board Member Black? Board Member Noon?
Yes.
Board Member Whalen?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, and then the consent calendar for the 5th of June.
Thank you, Chair Moore. We had item A, 2541 Modoc Road, that received project design and final approval with the following comments. And that was the only item on that agenda. Thank you.
Move to accept the minutes.
Okay. All,
Second.
okay, any discussion? No? Let's take our vote.
Chair Moore?
Yes.
Vice Chair Six?
Yes.
Board Member Anderson?
Yes.
Board Member Noon?
Yes.
Board Member Whalen?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, thank you. Now on to announcements, requests by applicants for continuances, future agenda items, etc.
Yes, Mr. Chair, just wanted to share that tomorrow evening that City Council will be making appointments for the Spring Advisory Board recruitment. So we hope to have one more ABR member here shortly, and I will follow up via email with the board on who that will be. Also, unfortunately, we had to have a canceled meeting due to lack of quorum recently, so we're looking at scheduling, and a lot of it the things that affect scheduling are noticing requirements, kind of where projects are, when they're submitted, so it's all a little bit of a game. So we will be following up, and we may have to ask for a special hearing just to relieve the pressure on development projects. So we'll be conscious of what we're scheduling projects for and trying to keep things moving for applicants, and we'll try to work that out so it's not as onerous on your schedule as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anything from the board? Any future agenda items, etc.? Like to hear? No? Okay. Subcommittee reports? No? Okay, well, that's it for general business. I think we can move on to item 1. All right. This is a continued item here for project design approval. This is 401 and 409 East Haley Street. This is a proposal for a new mixed-use development using the AUD program. The project includes voluntary lot merger, demolition of existing structures, and construction of a 3-story mixed-use building with 26 residential units, 5,011 square feet of commercial space, including 2,728 square feet of office retail, and 4 short-term vacation rental units. Architectural Board of Review approval of a development plan is requested for the 2,276 square feet of net new non-residential area. A ground-level parking garage will provide 53 parking spaces, and project requires the removal of 20 on-site trees. Project design approval is requested, and requires compliance with the project compatibility analysis, urban design guidelines, infill design guidelines, outdoor lighting design guidelines, and the Haley-Milpas design guidelines. It was last year, May 1st. Welcome back. And I believe we had a motion from our last review. Okay, so continued indefinitely. The board continues to appreciate the organization, massing, and design of the building. The board requests a study of the code to see if the corridor of the east property line can be further eliminated to reduce the mass. The board requests a study to see if additional vertical planting elements can be included along the parkway along Haley Street. Applicant should finesse the fenestration and organization of the materials to be more in line with a less severe contemporary expression and express a more humble industrial architecture. The applicant could refer to previous discussion comments in regard to suggestions. Okay. The board would like to see some ideas on the exterior lighting proposed, window jamb head details of material board. Okay. If you could introduce yourselves.
Mark Kirkhart, Principal Design Arc Architects.
Melissa Turner with Design Arc as well, Senior Project Manager.
Nicole Horn, Associate Principal at CJMLA, Landscape Architect.
All right.
So we're just going to kind of go down the list and kind of outline the adjustments and changes that we've made. The first one was regarding this exit corridor that's that exits out along the east there. And unfortunately, because of the ADA requirements of that exit door, we have to have that 1 foot on the push side of the door. So we really can't push that back. And we also need the landing dimensions in front of that door for ADA accessibility for exiting. So we're pretty much not going to be able to make that change. We didn't feel it was necessary to carve out a corner of the living space in order to accommodate that, in our opinion. Already kind of not an oversized living room. So that's what we look at that on the plan. Vertical planting, we're going to go to the elevations. So we were able to adjust the street trees along Haley. We added an additional tree. If you recall, we also had palm trees shown before, but those were not approved by the urban forestry or whatever. So this is the tree that's the approved street tree, but we did add an additional tree on that side. As far as additional verticality of landscape, we added a trellis over the garage entrance that you can see there. That was not there before. We also wanted to make it very clear that there was some discussion last time that these residential elements were actually cantilevered off of the street, and I think it was Richard that suggested maybe they should be grounded. They actually are grounded. We can show you in a 3D view, but those are actually board form concrete pylons that support the buildings up above. They're not cantilevered. None of those blocks are cantilevered. The other little small finesse that you can see on this, we added a steel coping that cantilevers beyond the edge of the plaster, so you get a little shadow line there. And so this was kind of one of our ideas to kind of soften up the architecture a little bit. Instead of just having a plaster parapet cap, it gives you a nice shadow line there, which is kind of reminiscent of having some sort of almost like a parapet coping on there. We changed the vertical siding from the corrugated metal siding from horizontal to vertical, which is a suggestion that it would be more like it would be used in a conventional metal building. We extended that green wall up higher to make it a little bit more of a vertical proportion. That is on a board form concrete wall. That's going to be a similar kind of a treatment to what it goes on across the street at the mill. We also expanded the green roof over the top of that, and we're changing the plant material in that, so that it's something that's more visible instead of just a sedum that would be low behind the parapet, something a little taller. let's see what else. Move back on that, the Laguna Street elevation. We also changed the proportions, if you want to leave it at this elevation on Haley Street. We had some horizontal band windows between the kind of the vertical blocks, and we changed those to these kind of stacking vertical 3-foot wide panels, which was not like that before. It was more of a long horizontal. So the idea was it plays in and kind of mimics the proportion of the industrial windows. It also has a steel surround, a little cowl around it that provides sun control, but it actually goes all the way around on all 4 sides. And we actually have a little detail of that in some wall section details that we'll show you in a moment. Just to backtrack a little bit, we are proposing to keep the trellises on the roof. We're going to install solar collectors on top of those. They are small. They only shade an area of about maybe 10 by 12, a place where someone could have a table up on the roof. And as has already been spoken, we really don't want to have umbrellas up there that would be getting damaged by wind and so on and so forth. Here on this roof plan, you can also see where we're installing additional solar collectors, and they are placed such that they're as far away as possible from the elements above them for shading. So they're kind of in the most efficient place for collectors on the flat roof. Now you can go to. So we also changed on this elevation. We changed the corrugated metal to vertical as opposed to horizontal. We expanded that window where the cursor is right now. That was a kind of a shallower slit window. We made it taller and once again introduced the verticality of the mullions. We also expressed the green roof on both of these elements more than what it had shown before, extending it out towards Haley. We added another green trellis up over the garage entrances so that the vines would crawl up over that. So we think we've really done a lot, as well as along both streets now we have a curb parkway that's landscaped that has stepping stones where people that park parallel can step across the landscape to get to the sidewalk. So I think we've really tried to accentuate and add a lot of greening of this building for as kind of urban as it is. Here's a view from the east. So we added a tree. We added another tree well up on the podium there, so we could get an additional tree there. And we think that this elevation has a lot of undulation in it and a lot of interesting materiality. Once again, the corrugated metal has changed to vertical throughout. Go to the upper right-hand corner one. So here you can see the little shadow line that's created by that parapet, which we think adds a nice little detail to it that keeps it from being quite as stark. And once again, you can see the street trees along Haley. It does a really good job of mitigating the architecture. And here you can see right where it says Java. We're thinking that might be a coffee place on the corner, but that's a board form concrete wall. It doesn't show in the elevation real well because it has that big flame tree parked in front of it or planted in front of it. So those elements are supported by mass on the ground level. They're not cantilevered. You had asked for some window details. So we've got some wall sections here in the middle, and then there are some exploded details on the left-hand side. So you can see the window head on detail number 5. It's very deeply recessed into those plaster elements. We're just showing the structure as shading for shade for this point, not showing all the detail inside of it. Shade structures that are cantilevered. There'll be some tube steel. We got like 3 pages of details. We can go dive bomb into every single one if you want, but these will be further developed when we're here for final approval, obviously. But just to give you an idea of where we're headed, we have garage doors on the lower level, overhead sectional garage doors so the commercial spaces can open to the sidewalk. You can see on the right-hand side, those are the details for the it's kind of industrial steel windows that would have operable panels. and integral sunshades, tube steel. The other thing you asked for was some concepts on lighting, and what we really want to do is really play down the actual, having a lot of fixtures on this building. There will be some, small downlights in some of the soffits. The garage entrances would be lit up by, you blow that up a little bit, uplighting in the paving. The idea is to have it scallop on that wall and slightly illuminate the lid, so that won't be impacting the night sky at all because it's under the very deep overhang. So we're not hanging a bunch of fixtures on the building. The only exception to that, you can see we have some little downlights in the trellises that would shade the outdoor patios that are in front of the retail spaces. And then we introduce some sconces that are basically wall wash type sconces in key areas, like at some of the like this is up on the roof deck right next to the door, the stairs that goes down. Other balconies would be lit with step lights, so we're just washing the floor surface as opposed to putting a light fixture up on the building. So the idea is to have a very subtle, architecturally illuminated building that with not a bunch of bright lights showing. So this is the material palette. The corrugated metal is going to be painted with I think it's the Kendall charcoal is kind of a gray. And we have the wood siding, there's kind of a weathered siding and board form concrete. The two colors on the lower right there, those are the colors of those are the preliminary colors at this point of the blocks of residential units. And you can just kind of see the accent colors that were, all of the doors and windows would be a dark bronze anodized aluminum. So I think that's kind of the highlights of the changes that we've done to hopefully address some of the things that you were looking for, and then we'll let Nicole take you through the landscape.
Thanks, Mark. I don't have much to add. This is the existing tree plan. That hasn't changed since the last time you saw it. Mark has mentioned the additional trees that we've added along Haley, the fifth stenocarpus there. We've also extended the parkway, so it's continuous, and we're adding some steppers so that you can get from the parking lane to the sidewalk. And then we've got the additional trellises, which you can kind of see there, that mesh pattern over the garage entrance, both on Haley and on Laguna. And I think what's going to be really beautiful about those is it's very similar to what you see across Santa Barbara, only what you see more often is like a stucco archway and an arcade and then a vine growing up over that arch. This is very similar in my mind, and I think with the addition of the tree on the courtyard level, these trellises, this additional planting, it's going to feel a lot more lived in and a lot more timeless, and you get these different layers of planting now on all of the elevations at all of the floors. In addition with the green roofs that we mentioned, the extended roofs, and we're planting some taller grasses in those now. And then on the last slide, that's just showing the roof plan. We've got those bright blue solar panels now. So, we're going to have to work through DD and CDs into making sure that those trellises can support both a living vine and the solar panel, but we're confident we can make that happen. And I think that's it.
Okay, thank you. We can open public comment now for this item.
All right, thank you, Chair Moore. I'll go ahead and start with in-person public comment. At this time, I haven't received any speaker slips, but just as a reminder, if anyone wishes to speak in person, you can fill out a speaker slip by the back door. Seeing no one move to speak, I'll go ahead and move to virtual public comment. If you wish to speak on Zoom, you can raise your hand at this time and I'll call on you. I don't see any hands raised on Zoom, but we did receive 2 letters from Clay Oral and Thomas Smith for this item. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Chair Moore.
Okay, thank you. We'll close public comment and go to questions. Mr. Whalen, do you have any questions?
No questions, Chair Moore.
Mr. Noon?
None.
Mr. Six?
Yes, thank you, Chair Moore. The parapet material, I'm looking at the molding at the very top. Is that going to be a concrete? You're just placing the
Steel, painted.
Yes. But what are you mounting the steel on? Is
Under the wood framing.
wood framing? Okay,
Yeah, the building is wood framed,
okay,
so yeah, it'd be waterproofing and then it would go over the top of that.
all right. So you're actually going to use that metal as your waterproofing?
Well, they'll actually be waterproofing under that as well.
Okay, great. Now, the windows that you are in the metal sections of the front elevation, those are recessed how far?
We'll go to the section, we'll show it to you in the section.
Thanks. I didn't,
The main thing is it also has a surround around it. It has a shroud. We could probably show it better in the three-dimensional view.
so dimensionally, it's about how far in from
We
the,
have a detail.
Okay.
There's a steel surround that sticks out about a foot beyond,
no, the gray window,
shows in the more straight-on view. There you go. Blow that up. So you see it actually has a steel surround on four sides, just like a blinders, that go all the way around like a cowl. So the window would be set back about 3 inches in the wall, but then this cowl actually extends out
Okay.
even beyond the wall surface. So
So-
it helps you with sun control, gives you more of a shadow line
yeah. So the glass is only 3 inches back from the metal
from the
surround?
corrugated metal.
Yes,
But there's a
right.
surround that sticks out about a foot in front of the corrugated metal.
Understand. And as long as we're talking the metal, you said would be painted, that would be a Conair or baked enamel finish?
We'll work that out. We haven't quite got there yet, but
Okay,
the idea is it's not going to be galvanized metal.
all right.
I mean, it'll be galvanized for water, or metallized or whatever for longevity, but it's not going to be a bright, bright galvanized.
Nor glossy.
No gloss.
And then, do you know what the vertical trellises, screens on the ground floor, what would, if the vines are not successful on those particular, for any particular reason, no, the vertical ones, those are horizontal. Do you know, what is, yeah.
We're going to do a very similar detail to what's across the street at the mill, which is a welded wire mesh that the vine grows on, natural,
And
steel.
it's- If I
rusted
remember,
steel.
remember, it's kind of rustic.
Corten, like a
Yeah,
Corten steel, rusted,
so-
yeah.
yeah.
And I think they're actually grapevines that grow on there. So they're deciduous, which actually makes it really beautiful because it looks different at different times of the year.
Yeah, so it's kind of rustic.
Yeah, but it'll be a filigree of woven
Okay.
rusted steel under the vine.
very
Yeah,
good.
and those grapes are so aggressive, and you can tell at the mill, they really almost cover up the entire thing,
Ah,
and they
okay.
look beautiful in my mind, and they have been maintained really well and look full.
So I didn't get a look at those. So they are successful across the street.
Yes.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Okay, those are my questions.
Okay, Ms. Anderson, any questions?
What are your thoughts on the material for the garage doors? Is it solid or transparent?
It'll be transparent
Transparent. Okay,
For-
so like a metal.
for exhaust too,
Yeah.
for ventilating it. Yeah, it'll be, we'll specify that. We haven't specified it yet,
Yeah, I
but
was
it'll be
just
some sort of an
curious
open.
What your thoughts were?
Yeah.
That's my only question.
Okay. My only question is, do you have thoughts on roof equipment, where that's going to be dealt with for each unit, or how's that going to handle?
Right now, currently, we're thinking about mounting them on racks, the heat pumps, mounting them on racks in the garage,
Garage,
as
okay.
opposed to on the roof. Any purveyors that we have in the commercial space, there will not be a hood. We're not going to have a restaurant with cooking hamburgers and french fries or whatever, so there won't be a big rooftop fan or any of that to deal with. It'll be simply, cold table or whatever if they're serving sandwiches. So we think it's all going to be able to be inside the garage.
We've got tall ceilings due to the stackers.
What's that?
We've got tall ceilings due to the stackers.
Yeah, we have extra tall ceiling because we have enough height for the stackers, so we've done that successfully on several projects.
Okay. And then remind me where the transformer
It's on the.
is hidden.
It's on the northwest corner. A little notch out right there, and it's enough, it's set back far enough that we'll be able to have some landscape screening around it.
Okay. Any other follow-up?
I have a follow-up.
Questions?
Can
Yeah.
we go to the perspective looking down Haley at the corner? Okay. I was just gonna ask about lighting in the courtyard, but I don't think you can see it, so.
The courtyard on the
The-
second floor?
Yeah.
Yeah, that'll be, once again, it's probably just step lights and
Yeah,
the
I
little
don't-
sconces next to the door, so it'll be pretty discreet.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Anything else? Before we go to comments, okay, who would like to start? Anybody? Mr. New?
I can jump in. I'm going to be brief. I watched the video and was torn, I guess, between a couple board members. But at the end of the day, I think you've responded appropriately to the way the board has given you direction, and I find it ready for PDA.
Okay. Anyone else?
Mr. Chair, I really appreciate what you've done. I think it's made vast strides towards where I thought it needed to be to correspond with the Haley-Milpas guidelines. Is it quite enough? I'd still like to see a few other movement. I could go into those, but well, for instance, the cow, there's still too much streamlining, I think, going on. Like if I was very excited to see a parapet on these hard forms, contemporary cubes, but yet it's a steel, very contemporary solution. It'd be nice to simply have just a plaster cap or a plaster molding. I still think that the introduction of the lower floor of the board form supporting those cubes is, I'd rather see that in plaster. There's let's see what else. I still am a little uncomfortable, especially as we have to set a standard up and down Milpas for the Milpas design guidelines, and I'd like to see it go a little bit more in my mind. Thanks.
Okay. Ms. Anderson? Yeah.
I think it's ready for project design approval. I think that the changes they've made and responded to our comments from last time are acceptable. I think the architectural language is clear with the concrete base being consistent and the materiality changing on the forms above. I look forward to the detailing and the progress, and I think the recess of the windows and doors are appropriate.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Whalen, any comments?
No comments.
Okay. My own comments is I would echo what Mrs. Anderson has to say. I think the addition of the street trees is really successful, and additional landscaping features are really helpful to help soften this building and soften the materiality, and I think it's ready for project design approval. So, I will make that motion. And just as I stated, and then I can make the compatibility findings. Can we swear? If we could. There we go.
That's not the right slide.
Do we need to do the development findings first, or does it matter?
I don't think
Okay. Okay. So I can find that the project as proposed is consistent with the design guidelines, as it is within an area of the city, and the proposed materiality is compatible with the surrounding neighborhood. Number two, I can find that the project is compatible with the character of this neighborhood, and in particular with the Haley-Milpas design guidelines, which describe projects being based in the sort of historic Santa Barbara design style, but in a more humble and in a more humble style with differences in the materiality and in a more industrial material. Number three, it is appropriate in size, mass, bulk, height, and scale. Number four, please. We are not aware of any adjacent landmarks or historic resources. Number five, does not impact any public views of the oceans and mountains or established public views of the oceans and mountains. Number six, the project, as we've seen today, has added additional landscaping, which in my mind is an appropriate amount of open space and landscaping. Okay, and then our development plan findings. We can find that the proposed development complies with all provisions of the title. It's consistent with the principles of sound community planning and does not have a significant adverse impact upon the community's aesthetics or character. And it is compatible with the neighborhood based on the project compatibility analysis that we just read. And D, the proposed development is consistent with the policies of the City of Santa Barbara Traffic Management Strategy as much as we understand.
Yes.
Okay. Then do we just read these out?
Mr. Chair and motion maker, so this is just if there are conditions of approval that you wish to add. So there's no, you're not obligated to add conditions of approval unless you see fit.
Yeah, not at this time, so, okay. Okay. Is that all of them?
I'll second.
Okay, seconded by Ms. Anderson. Any discussion? No? Okay, let's take our vote.
Chair Moore?
Yes.
Vice Chair Six?
No.
Board Member Anderson?
Yes.
Board Member Noon?
Yes.
Board Member Whalen?
No.
Motion passes.
Okay, thank you.
And part of my interruption, if I may ask the two dissenting board members if they could be specific in why they weren't able to support the motion.
Yeah, Chair Moore, I still think that the building is too contemporary in its detailing to be consistent with what I understand the Milpas guidelines to be.
And I wanted to remain consistent with my previous vote. I don't find it does meet the compatibility findings. It doesn't reflect the Haley-Milpas design guidelines. It's not compatible with the neighborhood in terms of its size, scale, and bulk. And it really doesn't reflect any of the special qualities that we associate with Santa Barbara.
Okay, thank you. And then there is an appeal process at this point, correct? So here's the appeal process on screen if you so wish to follow. Thank you. Okay, so our next item is on at 3:50, so it looks like we need to take a recess? No, we can roll right into it? Okay. Here they are. Come on down. Okay, well, I'll start reading. This is item number 2. This is 302 and 308 West Montecito Street. This is a proposal for a 3-story development, including a 31-room hotel and 1,546 square foot commercial space. Project includes 46 parking spaces and 11 bike parking spaces. Vehicle parking is also provided for the hotel annex proposed at 311 West Montecito Street. The project includes demolition of 4 residential units and an office space, and a merger of the 2 lots. Project received development plan and transfer of existing development rights approvals by City Council in December of 2019. Project design approval is requested and requires compliance with the project compatibility findings and the City Council resolution. And we last saw this February 21st of this year. And
One moment, Chair Moore. Let me pull up the minutes.
thank you. Okay. Board requests additional information regarding the surrounding site, photography, aerial images, documentations from neighboring buildings. Provide a 3-dimensional model if possible. The north wall shall be more articulated rather than blank. Revise the elevator tower to be more in Santa Barbara style, and a reduction of height, bulk, and scale. Okay, welcome back. If you could introduce yourselves.
Thank you. My name's Noah Greer. I'm here with On Design Architects.
Hi, Jarrett Gorin from Vanguard Planning. And is our PowerPoint loaded up on here? I hope this isn't coming out of our time. I'll talk really fast, like those people on Sirius XM commercials.
Maybe you could do it in charade. I'll do the interpretive dance while he narrates. Oh, I would have offered that one.
Now it's more rounded.
That's funny.
Sorry, I was away on vacation.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, perfect.
Apologies.
Okay.
All right. We can start the clock now.
Great. So I thought after the last hearing, it'd be good to just run through sort of the background and history on this with some pictures, since I think Kevin was the only person on the board when this had originally come through here. So that's what I'm going to run you through here. So this is the project that was before your board way back in 2018. And we're going to look at all 4 elevations of it. That's the view that faces the freeway and the neighbor, Bonnie Donovan's property. This is from the west, so this is the one that faces the building next to us, not really visible from many of the streets. This is the east elevation, which faces the car wash across the street from us on Bath Street, and where the entrance to our parking garage is. And these are your minutes when you gave this basically a yes nod on concept and sent it forward to Planning Commission. And I want to pay special attention to item B here, where the board found that the design of the project's compatible with desirable architectural qualities and characteristics of the neighborhood surrounding the project. Although additional review materials provide, right, obviously after it goes through Planning Commission and everything, you wanted to see it again. So what happened after that? So the Planning Commission heard this project on August 15th of 2019, and they denied it. And their biggest issue was that it wasn't a housing project, which was unusual, but that was their basic findings. And then they also didn't like the modern aesthetic, and they thought the mass bulk and scale was too large the way it was. So we appealed that to the city council, and then at the first city council hearing in November of 2019, the council wanted changes to it. They wanted a different architectural style, specifically Santa Barbara Spanish. They wanted some reductions in mass bulk and scale, and their other big issue was there was residential units on the site that were going to be demolished, and they wanted replacement units, and we agreed to this off-site replacement with them. And anyway, that was important for them, not so much aesthetics. So this is what we went back to city council with in December of 2019. And it's still 4 stories, it's just Spanish. This was reduced in mass, bulk, and scale. The height came down a little, the widths were all reduced, and the setbacks around the perimeter were all increased. And so, you know, these are the elevations, again, that's facing north. This is Bath Street. And then, or no, I'm sorry, that's Bath Street. The other one was facing the building next to us. Bath Street, and then the city council at that next hearing in December, they upheld our appeal. So the project was approved. They overturned Planning Commission's denial. And this is the city council resolution that's referenced in our agenda item, which says that the review and approval at your board now needs to be consistent with this resolution. And this is what the city council found, that the mass bulk and size shown on the revised drawings is compatible with the surrounding neighborhood, and that the architectural style of the project is compatible with the surrounding neighborhood. And then this one's about the housing units. So the reason I bring all this up is after the February hearing we had here, we're not here to relitigate major aspects of this project, such as, you know, how many hotel rooms there are, how big the 4th story is, or whether there should be a 4th story, or you know, in general, the mass bulk and scale, or anything like that. That's been hashed out all the way through city council. So we're here for guidance on refinements to the design. We did get good comments from you in February about refinements to the design, and Noah's going to walk through how we responded to all of those. But in terms of the general mass bulk and scale, number of stories, number of rooms, et cetera, that's been through city council, and they specifically found all of that compatible with the neighborhood. And that's the same city council we have sitting up there right now. There hasn't been any big changes up there. So that's my brief history review. I'll turn it over to Noah.
Thank you. All right, once I get set up here, I will I'm happy to be here to show you the few changes that we made and walk you through the additional exhibits that we've brought today. Very quickly, I'll start with the existing site plan. Just to make your board aware, we've had a couple meetings with the neighbor, Bonnie Donovan, to the north here regarding some utilities and some structures, walls that cross the property line, and we have had that confirmed with a new survey. So those discussions are ongoing, but will be as accommodating as feasible. We need to determine a bit later on down the road how much over excavation will be just geotechnically needed as to whether we can keep some of these walls. But if possible, we'll be as accommodating to the neighbor as possible there. Okay. Flipping to the new site plan and just focusing on a couple minor updates. At the north side, adjacent to Ms. Donovan's property, we have a new entry gate here, and that's to provide access, if needed, to those utilities, et cetera, for the neighbor. And now, at this southeast corner, one update that has been made is to push in the outdoor dining. You'll see this in the landscape plan later, but I think it's nice and clear here that we've taken the planter and pulled it to the property line at the sidewalk, so we have more of a buffer there between the two. Okay, there really have been no substantial changes to the floor plans, so I'll just flip through those. Okay, and to our elevations, I'm going to start with Montecito Street and talk through the updates there. Yikes. Okay, this is our south elevation facing Montecito Street. The updates we made here is we added the windows to the left of the entry to help fill out this portion of the elevation. We increased the height, changed the proportions slightly on these storefront windows, so they're a bit larger and fill more of that front elevation. We also adjusted what was happening here in the middle of the facade. We went back to something we'd shown earlier, where we have a little more variety in the slopes and the levels of things here. We have 3 openings, whereas we went back to 2, et cetera. In general, and you'll see this on all elevations, we reduced sort of unnecessary ornamentation, including in those elevations that Jarrett showed a number of sort of potted elements or pineapple finial type elements that we were showing before. I also removed some torch-like sconces, let's say. Lastly, you'll see here the new tower. That was a point of discussion. It was a very simple sort of square extrusion with a parapet roof before. And here we're keeping it simple and as low as possible. But now we're seeing here a nice copper gutter at a hipped roof with Spanish tile. And then we've widened this element, this portion of the tower to help tie it into the rest of the architecture, so it didn't feel so much like a hitchhiker's thumb. Okay, and now looking at the north elevation, this is facing the neighbor, Ms. Donovan's property. The change here was to include these recessed areas as if archways or previous openings had been filled in with a relief of, let's say, 3 inches or so, and it's all stuccoed and just gives a bit of movement to that elevation. We added scuppers and downspouts, and we have additional landscaping in the landscape plan there now. Okay. Thanks. For the life of me, I cannot navigate this system for some reason. Okay, so we'll see here the Bath Street elevation. We carried those taller 12-foot storefront windows around the corner, so that's all consistent, and that's really the only change that was made to this elevation. Oh, the other thing we've added on all the elevations is the actual street trees, an approximation of the actual street trees and their locations, and that's what we're seeing here. And now looking at our west elevation, really no changes here other than that tower element updated that you see there. And then you're also seeing here the neighbor to the north, Ms. Donovan's property, with approximate heights of those buildings there. And we'll see that more in the street elevations. Okay, we'll start here on Bath Street. We see the street and the sidewalk on the left, our proposed building here with its updates, and then the neighbor's property here as we move farther up Bath. In the foreground, there are these single-story residential cottages, and then the two-story commercial building behind. Okay, and I'll zoom us way out on West Montecito Street, where we see the leftmost portion of this elevation. I'll zoom in later. The cottage residential care, the proposed building, Bath Street. We have the car wash there. And then at, I believe it's 220 West Montecito, we have I don't know exactly what the use is, honestly, but as I walked by and tried to figure that out, a semi-private, at least, use. And I was quite interested to see the relationship between the two. And when you do actually draw a line at the same elevation between the two, our building is taller only at the equipment screening and the tower element itself. Otherwise, the majority of those third floor parapets align with the top of the existing building there. Okay. Wrapping up with landscape, I'll show you a few of those minor updates, really mostly here on the ground floor at the street corner, where we're bringing the landscape into the foreground and then have the outdoor dining behind that. And then up here at the corner, what didn't make it into this plan is likely a proposed gate through here. And then we have some additional planting through here. Okay, lastly, on our rooftop deck, there were questions about what we were planning up there. So we'd like to integrate some larger planters with some trees and some planters along that Bath Street perimeter to provide at least, some screening and some greenery up at that level. Okay, I'll leave us with the Montecito Street elevation for now. I hope your board will agree that the changes we made were in the right direction and that you'll see fit to grant us approval to move on. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll open public comment now for this item.
Thank you, Chair Moore. I'll go ahead and start with in-person public comment. At this time, I do have one request to speak. Bonnie Donovan, if you would like to make your way to the podium, you'll have 2 minutes to speak.
I back up what Derek says. Until he got on board, they weren't changing things, and it is moving forward. Sorry about that. From day one, I showed him the utilities in the back and our walls, and on May 2nd, finally, they came over to talk. And they had another stuff, and then the utilities peoples came and marked everything, and they are behind our cottages. So we still need to work on that, and they still want to remove our 2 brick walls. And they say I don't know if he could show you, they're replacing with wood. So where's like for like? And when he was in front of you and in front of HLC, they needed brick walls to protect their guests at the annexes in the hotel. But we don't get the same thing. And then the brick walls are going to give us more sound protection because we have that mechanical lift behind the cottages where people live. And then the front, they've moved the garbage from the 4 decades of garbage on Montecito Street. Now it's next to our cottage. So our brick wall's going to help buffer that a little bit too. Up on top, overlooking us, is the 4 rooms that I could see. It was small on my computer. And I want to know about if we could reduce the size, bulk, and scale just over by us, not the whole hotel, for the pilasters. And then if they couldn't have a balcony to look down over our cottages, because it's a hotel, not housing, they don't need the open space, then it would give more privacy to our tenants living in our places. And I think that's pretty much it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, at this time, I haven't received any other speaker slips. And I don't see anyone moving to speak, so I'll go ahead and move to virtual public comment. If you wish to make a comment on Zoom, you can raise your hand at this time and I'll call on you. I don't see any hands raised on Zoom, and we also did not receive any written correspondence for this item. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Chair Moore.
Okay, thank you. And go to questions. Ms. Anderson, do you have any questions?
Sure. Do you have a building section to address the privacy concerns that we can look at?
No, we do have a building section in that direction. Okay, this section is not cut through those decks. Let me see. Yes, here we go. Yeah. Okay, so in this section, we're seeing the property line here with the 5-foot setback, and then I'm going to call it another 5, 6 or so. We pushed back the guardrails at the decks, the walls there. All of that is under that solar line, and then we reduce the plate, in fact, of these rooms there. Here we're at 8 foot or so on the plate there. So there was an intention from the get-go to sort of pull things back to the extent feasible. And I know there would be some concerns with reducing the, say, livable space of those units even further.
And how tall is that railing for the outdoor deck?
I believe it's 42 inches.
Okay. And then can you point out the wall that was in question from the public comment?
Yes. There are 2 walls. Here we're at the northwest corner. This wall, and then this portion of the wall at the front of the site.
And those are existing brick.
Those are existing. I personally don't know that they're brick. They are block or masonry of some kind. And again, I've been told that we'll be happy to keep them if possible, but I certainly can't say that it's been deemed feasible yet, because we may need to excavate right to the property line.
Okay. And then can we go back to the street, Montecito?
Mhm.
Where am I? Was there any consideration for making all the storefronts the same proportions, the same widths on both left and right?
I mean, I guess I'd say yes, in that I played with that back and forth a few times. It's certainly something I wouldn't necessarily be opposed to. You know, I could see these could potentially reduce in width to be more similar to these. I wouldn't have a problem with it.
Okay, those are my questions.
Okay, Vice Chair Six.
So, the status of the brick wall, if it has to be eliminated, you're willing to bring it back to match that material, or is it wood fence?
To be honest, I don't know that discussions have extended past can we do it yet. If we
Okay.
can, we will. The proposal initially, and that's what we were showing those walls to be demoed, was to replace it with a wood fence initially, at least.
Okay, can you go back to the site plan
Sure.
in regards to what the uses are, in regards to those 2 areas? That's the existing, what's the proposed? Okay, so it's just the back wall of the stacker and the transformer, correct? Yeah. All right, this might not seem relevant to architecture, but I think it's on this floor plan. Can you scan down to your center? No, can we go to the first floor plan? Yes. So how does one, I'm not quite understanding the circulation. I would assume that the circulation is important from the garage to elevator, stair, and lobby, et cetera, and I don't understand how one circulates through that. It's germane to my last, my comments, so if you could explain that.
The primary entry from the parking garage is, you have the option of, if you're over here, walking through the open garden, but really the entry into the building is here. And then because of the elevation changes and some of the flood concerns, we have to ramp ourselves
I get it.
up in the building here.
So
Yeah.
the garden is kind of a trapped, it's not to be circulated through. It's for visual.
In general, yes.
Got
And
it.
then with windows here, you get the light and the green.
Got it, thank you. Yeah, I think that's my question, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Newton, any questions?
No questions.
Mr. Whalen, any questions?
Yes, just to put a period on it, was there a survey done to determine the location of the block walls on either the Donovan parcel or your parcel?
There was, yes, and we had the survey, the initial survey showed them, but we had them go in and focus in again on that area specifically between the last time I was here and now. And they've confirmed that, yes, unfortunately, they're on our property, and there are some utility runs that are also, I believe it's a gas utility line that's on our property.
Okay, I think I understood the previous questions too about there was a wood fence, you might replace the block wall if necessary. Where are you now with both of the property lines? What is the intention of the design?
I guess I'd say, in terms of what we're showing now, we're still showing a wood fence.
And that's true for both
It is, the north and the west property line.
Thank you. That's all I have, Chair Moore.
Okay. Could we put the motion up from last time again? Okay, so number one, so you provided some additional drawing documentation showing the adjacent structures and neighboring buildings. Is there a 3D model?
There is not. It's something we studied whether we could utilize what we had built so far. And it was just analysis of what's the time and cost of that versus, I guess, the return on that investment.
Okay. So then you addressed the north wall, you articulated, you add some articulation, and then you revised the elevator tower to be more in Santa Barbara style. Okay. Did you reduce the height of it?
We did not reduce the height of the building because the plate heights on those rooms really.
I was talking about the elevator tower.
The elevator tower is at the lowest it could possibly be.
Okay. Great. Okay, any follow-up questions before we go to comments? Mr. Whalen, would you like to start?
I'll start with comments. Firstly, I appreciate the additional information. It really helped me understand, especially your long sections through adjacent properties. I think those worked well, almost in lieu of a 3D model. There is some finesse and articulation that kind of belies interpretation from two-dimensional drawings. I appreciate the articulation on the north wall facing the Donovan property. I think that scales nicely and adds some interest to the design. The elevations also, I think, are quite handsome with the Spanish colonial revival details. Especially, I think you included a lighting fixture too, which I thought was very appropriate. Although I do think the tower could use some additional, how should I say, articulation. Yes, there is a buttress and a window on one elevation. The other three are rather blank. I would think that a tower would have a more unified look on all four sides, or at least those sides which are publicly prominent. That would be additionally the east and west, if you want to throw the north in for good measure. I guess I don't really understand the window in the tower. it's a non-functioning window, right? It's just a thing up there. I think that underlines my case for some further articulation of the tower. Thank you, Chair Moore. Those are my comments.
Okay, Mr. Noon, any comments?
Really nothing to add, very similar to what Board Member Whalen said. I did want to point out, though, the tower, I think that could be looked at again, and I didn't understand the window. There's, probably some other architectural features that could occur up there. So that's it.
Okay, Vice Chair Six.
Yes, I'm still, given that this is not a housing project, we can be more critical of mass bulk and scale. And I still am holding on to my idea that the volume, I think if you look through the sections, can we go back to the hard drawn sections? Yes, that first section upmost makes my case that there's very generous interior volumes that a sacrifice and could be made available for a building on the the upper floors that would be significantly set back from the street and from the neighbors to help mass bulk and scale. So that's my point driven there. As I explored with you the open air garden, it's nice, but it's, I don't think it's more important than setting this building back significantly to reduce its mass. I do appreciate the items that you have newly introduced. I think that whether the block wall is a fence or not, I think that the site uses back there are very passive, and I don't think the material of that barrier would introduce significant acoustic protection from the neighbors, so I'm not concerned about what material is ultimately decided upon that. Be nice if it's saved, yes, of course. And the only other thing I have is if you look at the front rendered elevations, I think, Mr. Knoll, I think that you've gone in the wrong direction on the 6 big blue openings on the ground floor. I think those are too large and should be either instead of pairs of two openings, maybe 3 openings, and at each set. It just this architecture is important to have a massing, and the openings here appear too big to visually support the masses above. So I would suggest that those be restudied, especially when you look at the heights of the lintel across the 2 openings to the west. That's I think they should be lowered, those openings lowered, and again have more mass there. But I think those 6 elements should be looked at to reduce and give more visual support for the floors above. Those are my comments.
Okay. Ms. Anderson, any comments?
I think they've addressed our previous comments acceptably, and I think that keeping the circulation on the inside is appropriate in this location versus pushing the circulation to the outside and pushing the mass in. So I think this is ready for project design approval today.
Okay.
If I may correct,
Yeah.
I wasn't suggesting that the circulation be on the outside. I was thinking that the amount of volume that's on the inside for circulation is too generous.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. I think so the request for the 3D model was just to try and help understand all of the various ins and outs and articulation, because there's a lot going on, and it's really difficult to fully grasp what's going on with setbacks, all the various setbacks and changes in parapet heights and all that. I think my own feelings is that the elevations on Montecito Street and Bath Street are fine. I think you've broken them up appropriately. I agree that the openings on the screen right now, on the ground floor, are probably a little oversized, and to be believable that that's a mass-bearing wall, you need to kind of pump up the volume of the vertical support elements and the lintel above that. Where I'm struggling to really understand is that at the rear of the project, if we go to the third floor plan, I believe, or the roof deck plan, anyway. Yeah. So having that 3D model would be, even in just a schematic form, would be really helpful to understand, well, how far, what is really happening as it's stepping back there to that roof deck where potentially there's lots of noise and activity. Is that going to really impact the neighbor? What has been done to try and mitigate that? And, we have that one section that cuts through that area, which is somewhat helpful, but it doesn't really tell the whole story about all of that articulation. So in the future, I think it would behoove you to bring along some views of those areas, and it's only going to help everybody's understanding. So I understand the concern for cost and time, but I think it would have been really helpful in this case to have that. So I think, so those are my comments. So in my opinion, sort of 3/4 of the building is ready for project design approval, but not being able to fully understand the back half is really kind of a stumbling block for me at this point. So, does anyone have anything else to add?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I think that instead of struggling with doing a 3D model and so forth, if your issue is this roof deck and so forth, it would seem to me, first of all, there's plenty of common area on the ground floor, and this roof deck is huge. If the applicant, in lieu of a 3D model, could radically reduce this roof deck to have more roof rather than the mansard roof on the Bath Street, and have this generous roof form, and find, a place for a roof deck that was 1/4 or 1/3 the size of what you have here, I would think that would be one way to tackle that issue.
Possibly. But I would want to give the applicant the opportunity to defend their design and make the right choice for the location and the neighbors and all of that. So, but those are my feelings. So if somebody would like to make a motion, we can discuss.
The motion would be for PDA, correct?
If you would like.
Yeah, and would we get that? I guess would be my first question. Is there enough?
Put it out there, see if it votes.
Yeah, or you could call for a straw vote,
Let's
asking
do a straw vote. That's a good idea.
who can, okay, so let's do a straw vote, asking what members could support the project as presented and provide project design approval.
Chair Moore,
No.
Vice Chair Six,
No.
Board Member Anderson,
Yes.
Board Member Noon,
Yes.
Board Member Whalen,
Yes.
Okay, there we go.
All right, well, I would like to make a motion then, that we, the board finds this compatible with project design approval. Yeah, obviously, if I don't feel that I need to put any stipulations on that. I think they have followed the board's direction in coming to with the current design and feel it's acceptable to move forward. Obviously, considering comments that have been made, certainly open to look at that. Unless anyone else wants to argue for an addition to that.
Well, it's important, so this PDA step is important, so this sort of codifies the design. So any particular comments that you are saying that are understood, you need to, I think, list them out.
Okay, so for instance, I guess there was a few comments on the tower, to maybe redesign the tower with more consistent architecture on all sides. I think since there was a few comments on the openings along, the 6 openings along the front, I guess I wasn't as concerned about them because, you know, in further design, it structurally may require to just increase push and pull. But I'll add that the applicant would look at providing more constructible evidence of the size of the openings.
Okay, do we have a seconder of that?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion?
Need to add the findings in the motion.
Okay. So the board finds that the project is consistent with the design guidelines, the board that it is compatible with the architecture and the character of the neighborhood, it is appropriate in size, mass, bulk, height, and scale. It is sensitive to, I guess, there are no adjacent landmarks that it is negatively affecting. It does not negatively affect public ocean or mountain views, and the open space is appropriately designed.
Can you reread what he said?
Let's
Yeah.
repeat the motion, please.
Yeah, so the motion's for project design approval with the following comments. Comment 1, the board finds the project compatible for project design approval, and the applicant has followed the board's direction. Point 2 is redesign the tower with more consistent architecture on all sides. Point 3, the applicant would look at providing a more constructible evidence of the size of the 6 openings along the front, and then the compatibility analysis criteria.
If I may, could I do some wordsmithing? Can we just say for the tower to provide more articulation? And then just simply reduce the size of the windows of the ground floor? Would that be okay?
That's acceptable.
Okay, thanks.
Well, isn't it more articulation on all 4 sides, not just more articulation? Wasn't that the?
Well,
point?
that was in the body of our discussions. The designer will take them from there, yeah. Okay,
Well, I don't know.
more articulation on the public sides of the elevator tower.
Okay.
Is that acceptable?
That is
to
acceptable,
the
yes.
Maker and seconder of the motion?
Sure.
Okay. Anything else? Any other discussion? Okay, let's take our vote.
Chair Moore,
No.
Vice Chair Six,
No.
Board Member Anderson,
Yes.
Board Member Noon?
Yes.
Board Member Whalen?
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you all.
And then
Do we need to state for the record the no's?
Yes, so please state for the record the no's, your reasoning as why.
Go ahead.
My no vote is based on not feeling fully satisfied that the rear of the project is fully designed and understood, and that's it.
Again, mine is that I think there was opportunities to reduce the mass and scale of the project.
Okay. And the appeal process is displayed on screen if you so choose to take that route. Okay, thank you very much. All right. Item 3 is on at 4:30.
So, just state the reason as to your, Chair Moore to Board Member Anderson, would you be able to state your reason as to why you need to recuse yourself?
Oh, yes. I have to recuse myself from the next item because I'm the applicant.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, so this is item number 3. This is 414 West Cannon Perdido Street. This is a 2-story, 2-unit residential building using the AUD program. Our project includes two 932 square foot bedroom, two 932 square foot bedroom units. I don't think that's quite right. The proposed density on this 3,529 square foot lot is 25 units per acre. The proposal also includes 2 covered parking spaces in a 448 square foot garage. Final approval is requested and requires substantial compliance with the plans granted PDA on January 23rd of this year. Welcome back. Did we have anything on from our motion? Okay. And we're missing.
And then shall we wait until the other board members return? A quick little recess.
Okay. Provide plaster on the CMU block wall, and then we made the compatibility analysis. Pretty straightforward. Okay. If you could introduce yourselves.
All right, Lauren Anderson with A34 Studio.
Katie Klein, Perry Landscape Architecture.
Alan McLeod, A34 Studio.
So we really considered this plaster comment, and we decided to plaster the wall. And so what you will see on the elevations is that the previous wall that was CMU block is now plaster, and it's going to be a different color than our other plaster form. so we can, and same with the landscape wall in front, that was also CMU block, is now plastered. So, on our So the two-story form on the left here is more of a mission tan, and we did a lighter gray called canvas for the plaster walls. And that is, kind of sums up the comments. I can walk through the details now, since we're here for final, and then Katie will walk through any remaining landscape details that we can look at. All right. So you can see we now have plaster on our CMU wall. We have our wood trim base, our belly board trim that caps the bottom of our clapboard siding. We have a wood understory where the garage is recessed back. We can go back to that image. The wood will wrap underneath here, so you won't see any plaster or anything underneath. It's all going to be same wood. And we're not proposing any lighting in that cantilever either. All the lighting is inside the garage. And let's see. We have our parapet cap for the plastered form. We have our wood fascia with a metal cap along the gable form. We have exposed gutters and downspouts. In the plastered walls where there are windows, we are recessing the window and chamfering the plaster. In the wood form, we have a wood trim that protrudes to create a shadow line, and that's all painted white. Our garage door is a proposed sliding door that's transparent out of metal. And these are some remaining entry door and man door out of the garage details. All right, are you ready? Do you want to just scroll through? Yes, let me find them real quick.
So nothing has changed in the landscape. We've just gone into more detail for city permitting process. Go to the next sheet. Lighting, it looks like the image didn't show up there, so I did bring a spec of what the path light would look like. It's black, downward facing, pretty simple path light just for safety. And it's black in color. If you want to go to the next sheet. Irrigation, just showing we did it, details.
Oh, let's point out the backflow.
Right there. The irrigation backflow is pretty small in size right there in the detail. The hardscape material is all the same. Let me know if you have any questions on that. We have permeable pavers, 8x8 gray in the driveway. And then we have these really nice wood pavers. If you scroll for the pedestrian pathways, it's this detail here. This has gravel in the joint. And then that's the bike rack. And then we just have our standard permeable paver detail. And then planting, all the planting is the same. As far as trees being proposed, the smaller tree is probably 20-foot height max. A maroon color tree, and in the back probably gets to like 30 plus feet. It's a ceiba tree. Everything is 100% low water, and succulents, pretty more modern in design, I'd say. Simple grasses and succulents.
Okay. Then we have structural, electrical, mechanical.
Okay. You might run through the lighting plan, exterior lighting for us, if you could.
Exterior lighting,
Yeah.
yes. Oh, boy. So we have an exterior sconce at the entry, one next to each door, and then we have another exterior sconce right here. I'll go back to the cut sheet in a minute. And then inside the garage, we have a strip light next to the door, just on a motion sensor inside.
Okay. And then the path lighting is every,
Oh, I'll go back to the plan.
It's more towards the beginning. I think it's that one, yeah. So yeah, it's that.
So this would be inside, and then this is along the path. Looks like 5 feet.
Yeah, about.
okay.
And our mechanical units are in the back, on the ground, behind the building. Same with the trash. Okay, I think that's,
Does that conclude your presentation?
I think, yes, that
Okay.
does.
Great. Let's open public comment, please.
All right, thank you, Chair Moore. I'll go ahead and start with in-person public comment. At this time, I haven't received any speaker slips. And I don't see anyone moving to speak, so I'll go ahead and move to virtual public comment. If you wish to speak on Zoom at this time, you can raise your hand and I'll call on you. I don't see any hands raised on Zoom, but we did receive 2 letters for this project from Steve Johnson and Mason Bouchik. And with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Chair Moore.
Okay. Thank you very much. We'll close public comment and go to questions. Vice Chair Six, any questions?
Yes, thanks, Chair Moore. The,
Staff just wants to make a brief clarification. Those public comments were actually for the next item, so our apologies.
yeah, all right, okay. I think my main concern is your garage door material. Is there any intermediate supports that's a perforated metal, and those don't get very thick. And are you spanning the entire width of the door without any intermediate supports to keep that crisp and not warping and so forth?
No, it'll most likely. No, it'll most likely be a couple panels together that move. So yes, there will be intermediate supports.
On each door? Yeah, I would think so. And you say you're going to paint those? Is that a factory paint with a baked enamel, or you cannot get a bronze to match the rest of your metals?
We could get a bronze, yes.
Is that not your intent, to bronze the rest
Yeah,
of it?
dark, like a dark bronze,
Uh-huh.
yeah. That would be the intent.
Okay, so painted it would be dark bronze then,
Yes.
instead of painted.
I see what you're asking. Correct.
Okay. And is there a ground planting for screening the backflow, even though it's insignificant of size?
Yes. Keep going.
sorry.
It's like yeah, there we go. Oh yeah, so it's
Oh, okay.
the Cape brush. It's Chondropetalum. Yes, it's significant in height.
Oh, I
yeah,
really
it's
know
like
that
30,
Latin.
yeah, it's like 30 inches, I
Uh-huh.
would say.
And of a dense material?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yeah, it's the backflow plant.
very
I'd
good.
say.
Those are my questions. It's the
I
what?
put it in
I'm sorry, what? It's the what?
I call it the backflow plant. I put it in like every project as to hide the.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Noon, any questions?
I don't have any questions.
Mr. Whalen?
No questions.
Any thought on the fire backflow or for sprinklers yet? Where would that hide itself?
Same location.
Okay. Okay. Let's go to comments. Vice Chair Six?
Yeah, I think this is ready for final with the minor comment for staff to verify adequate back support for the perforated garage panel, and that it be bronze, dark bronze.
Okay. Any comments to the contrary?
No comments.
Okay. Would you like to make that a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion for final approval as again, with the comments to provide adequate backing support for the perforated metal garage door, and that same garage door panel be dark bronze anodized.
Anodized or painted?
Anodized.
Okay. All right. Any
Okay.
seconder?
It could be, if it was factory painted. Yeah. Or anodized.
Okay. Do we have a seconder of that motion? No? Okay. I'll second. Any discussion?
I do have discussion. So if looking at the history and then the board that is with us today, it appears that it would be a tie, potentially.
No, we're voting on substantial conformance.
This is,
Well, it requires substantial conformance, but we need to ensure that the details and materials, et cetera, are acceptable for final approval. So,
Yeah, and I can support that if you're worried about my negative vote.
well, I want to move the project for the purpose of the project. I didn't support an aspect of the project in the last one. I don't know that I'm necessarily required to vote that same way again. Okay. And in the spirit of the board from last time, I'm sure if all members were here, it probably would pass. So I just wanted to clarify that.
okay, well, let's take our vote and see what happens.
All right. Chair Moore,
Yes.
Vice Chair Six,
Yes.
Board Member Noon,
Yes.
Board Member Whalen,
No.
motion passes.
Okay.
And to state my reasons for no, to be consistent, as Mr. Noon has pointed out with my previous votes, I don't find the design compatible with the immediate neighborhood and its size, bulk, scale, and more importantly, the architectural character of that block, which is strictly Victorian houses of smaller scale and details. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right. Okay, so it looks like we need to adjourn until 5:45?
4:45.
4:45, sorry.
So the board will reconvene at 4:45 PM.
We're on to item 4. This is 528 West Figueroa Street. This is a proposal to demolish the existing single-family home and accessory building and construct a 2-story, 8-unit residential apartment building and 8 parking spaces. The project is designed to comply with the AED program and state density bonus program. Units range in size from 596 square feet to 1,020 square feet, with an average size of 790 square feet. Under the state density program, the project proposes the following concessions from the development standards to allow relief for parking design standards and stall maneuvering dimensions, relief from open and private yard requirements, and modification to allow parking within the required interior setback. 5 units are proposed as replacement units for the approved hotel at 302 and 308 West Montecito Street. Project design approval is requested, and this requires compliance with the project compatibility analysis guidelines and was last here May 1st. Okay, if we could have our minutes from last time. Okay, we appreciated the approach to providing parking at the rear. Study ways of providing a more friendly traditional street presence using architecture, landscaping, fencing, etc. Study moving the second floor away from the front property line and extending out over the parking area if that is feasible. Study ways to enhance these smallish private outdoor spaces with fencing, pavers, or other enhancement. Consult with the neighbors regarding the views into their properties as well as any fencing proposed along the property lines. Okay. Welcome back.
Thank you very much. My name again is Noah Greer, here with On Design Architects again to speak about the project that's providing the replacement parking for the last project I was here to talk about on West Montecito. This project is an 8-unit AUD project. I wasn't here that long ago, so I'll just jump right in. We've made some changes, and we met with the neighbors out on site to talk through and address some of their concerns. Again, I hope you'll applaud our efforts and perhaps grant us PDA. The main goal here was to provide more of that traditional street presence at a more human scale at the street along West Montecito. So there are some changes we made in response to your comments and some we didn't. I'll focus, of course, on the ones that we did, and I'll address the ones that we didn't afterwards. At the street here, we took the 2-story mass of the structure and pushed it back a foot while pulling forward a small section of that front elevation 6 inches to give us an 18-inch relief of only the first floor here that we'll see in elevation shortly. We also added a front door. The main door to Unit A now pulls right off the sidewalk on West Fig. So a pedestrian along West Fig would see this primary entry, and we introduced more of a residential feel with the fences, where here we have a low 42-inch redwood fence until we reach the mass of the building here, at which point it steps up on both sides. We have a primary entry right into that unit there. We've also added some landscaping to help the larger portion of the building at the center of the site recede back from the street, so we'll see that later. We did study pushing the building back over the parking as a way to potentially really push that mass all the way in on the block. Given the need to provide restricted income units and the budget for the project, it was just deemed infeasible to take that approach on the project. Okay, here at the site plan, we did revisit providing more defined private and semi-private spaces for these units. So what we'll see, again, more clearly in the landscape plan, here at Unit B and D, we've taken that space between the buildings and added, say, an architectural guardrail here, so they have a small private patio and then some landscaping to separate that from the shared sidewalk there. So that's on both units. At the covered entries that we'll see in elevation, we've also extended a guardrail to provide at least a nod towards privacy or to partially define a space there. so they're not all quite so open. You have somewhere to say, leave your sandals comfortably. Last in May, on the 22nd of May, is when we hosted the meeting on site with the neighbors. We had 3 neighbors come. We discussed the project, the logic of it extensively. We talked mostly about enhancing privacy along this southern property line. So what we've done there is we'll be extending an existing slump stone block wall that the neighbor has here that then extends across the front of their property. We'll be extending that back, and then on top of that, once we reach our setback roughly at the building here, then that steps up with a redwood fence on top of that. We also talked with them about taller landscaping, and so we'll see that along the southern property line. We'll see some additional trees in this enlarged planter here since we no longer have a main entry there. It's all planter. Okay. So in general, I believe we addressed all the neighbor concerns. At the end of the day, the neighbors are happy that we are providing 8 parking spaces, although perhaps they'd love to see more. There was another neighbor who called and wrote in to request that, we consider no parking. We did do that. We could qualify for that under the state program. We simply don't want to because parking out there is a nightmare. Okay, let me start at West Fig. So again, with some of the additional landscaping we have, I really believe that this rear portion of the building is going to fade back substantially from the public street, and you'll be seeing this elevation primarily. And, I'll be honest, the addition here is humble and was sort of intended to be so, where we have that main entry now off the street. At that smaller scale, we have the landscape fencing sort of defining that entry there. So I wouldn't say it feels like a single-family building. That's not what it is. But I would argue at least that it does help step down the scale substantially at the street. Okay, the other elevations remain generally unchanged. There's an error here in that the doors, we did go up to 8-foot doors. There was a comment that we considered doing that as an improvement to the elevations. So you're seeing that fixed here, where we have the windows and the doors sharing a head height at 8 feet. We have 9-foot plates on the property. So now looking at a longer elevation, this one facing the neighbors to the north, this one facing the neighbors to the south. So you're seeing here on the right where we have West Fig, that smaller scale entry. We do have we have a 30-inch overhang there to provide a bit of a covered entry, at least we'll say. And then that private patio that's tucked into the building is here. So the intention is that the guardrail there is of the matching style that we have on the balconies and elsewhere. Okay, I'll finish with the landscape plan. What we're seeing here along the south property line, these are now taller plantings. Let's see, I'm forgetting what we called them out as. Podocarpus, brush cherry, perhaps, and then we've added additional landscaping through here, including 2 taller trees that are intended to provide some shading. I think they're Sweet Shade, and we have an option as well for Brisbane box. Okay, we had palms at the front of the street, or the front of the project before. Now we've replaced those with matching trees to that south elevation here. Again, the intention there is that it helps screen that larger mass from the street. Okay. I think with that, I'll conclude. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay, let's open public comment for this item.
Thank you, Chair Moore. I'll go ahead and start with in-person public comment. At this time, I haven't received any speaker slips, and just as a reminder, if you do wish to speak in person, you can fill out a speaker slip by the back door. I don't see anyone moving to speak, so I'll go ahead and move to virtual public comment. If you wish to speak on Zoom, you can raise your hand and I'll call on you. I don't see any hands raised on Zoom, but we did receive 2 letters for this project for Steve Johnson and Mason Bouchette.
We do have somebody that would like to speak.
Feel free to come up, and then we'll just have you fill out the speaker slip afterwards. So if you come up to the podium here, you'll have 2 minutes to speak. So. And when you start to speak,
I'm Alex Gomez, and I live on 1126 San Pasqual, which is around the corner from that. I've lived there since '86. About a 600 square foot house, and remodeled, went through some of the procedures. It was a little more relaxed in '86, a lot more. My main concern, I think, with living there some 30 years is parking. The area now, we all know Santa Barbara is its rental situation. We're trying to get more housing. But again, I'm just concerned with that area is where the house is it's at a kind of a dead end. And I mean, the last 2 years, parking has just been an issue. And I know it might be too late to address some of these things with 1 parking space per unit, when I know that each unit almost has 2 cars. It's just one of the facts. The new housing that they put on, behind on Figueroa that turns into Walnut, that's there. The parking that's on the other side of Anapamu with the 3 units and that they built there, same thing. 1 parking space and the other is in front or parked on the sidewalk in front or the street. I think we haven't had any issues because being on the west side, I mean, we've had gang issues where it just it seems to people that are crowded in, and they have to have, right now I know most of the units now have a family in each room.
I'm sorry, sir, your
I mean,
your 2 minutes, your 2 minutes are up, I'm sorry.
Well, I
And
think we need to address parking.
to speak to that, our board unfortunately has no purview or say in the number of parking spaces that are required in a project. So that's set by the municipal code and state law in this case. So unfortunately, that's out of our hands. Our board's purview has to do with what the building looks like, how big it is, the landscape, the colors, and things like that. So
Well, I'm just addressing a problem that's just.
we understand. We understand.
And if right now we can't consider that, then, I mean, it's just going to get worse.
So the,
Majority of the older buildings,
sure, I understand. So the appropriate body to address those comments to would be the Planning Commission and City Council. So they meet at least once a month, and there's time built into their schedule to hear public comment just like this, and you can address them and explain more in detail about that. Okay?
okay. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you for coming. Okay, any other public comment?
I think that's it for public comment.
So we'll close public comment for this item and go to questions from the board.
I have a couple of questions, Chair Moore.
Great.
Mr. Greer, when the building was pushed back, What was lost at the rear of the site?
When we looked schematically at pushing the massing back, just so I understand the question.
Perhaps I misunderstood you, but I thought you stated the building got pushed back to accommodate an entry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
My
I
question
understand.
is, what was lost at the rear of the site?
Got it. The entire building was not pushed back, and I may have misspoken. I simply took the front units and compressed them 12 inches.
So they got smaller.
So the bedrooms got a little smaller.
That answers the question very neatly. Thank you. And when I look at the elevations, this is around, my question is around the windows. Some appear to be horizontal sliders, while most of them appear to be fixed pane. Could you talk about your ideas for the windows?
I will. Thank you for bringing that up. There was a comment about that last time I was here. The intention here is, before we were showing a number of sliders in these rough elevations, the intention is actually now to propose casements that are consistent with the sister project right behind. And this project takes access through the sister project, and stylistically, it's definitely a nod. It's not a nod. It's utterly consistent with the design of that project.
So what I'm mistaking for a slider is actually a dual casement?
It is, but you'll be forgiven for that, given the way I've depicted it.
Oh, all right.
Yes.
And then the others are just single hinge casement?
Correct.
Thank you. Those are my questions, Chair Moore.
Okay. Mr. Noon, any question?
That was my question about windows. Nothing further?
Vice Chair Six?
Yes, in your meetings with the owner, with the adjacent, were the privacy from the upper floor windows acknowledged and discussed?
It was, yes, and particularly in those south elevations, we talked about keeping those windows from being, say, double casements like we have elsewhere in the project, and limiting the size of them as we did here. So we discussed what we were proposing here as you're seeing it.
Okay. And is there, if we go to the, well, you can see it here, the profile of the new entry element. Is the overhang maxed out into, can you have a more significant roof overhang on at least the front there to, and not violate your setbacks?
No, in setbacks wise, yes. The way we're showing it is, I believe we have an 18-inch overhang typically on this building, and that what I'm showing there is a 30-inch overhang that conceivably could be extended, say at the front door, if that's what you're referring to.
All right. And then, is there any reason why you can't provide a little mini window to the trash area from the front of the street?
There isn't, and I'm sorry, I should have addressed that as well, because that was a topic of discussion last time. We could have a window there. We certainly could. In looking at the elevations, I just questioned whether it added anything, and I personally appreciated the ability to leave it a little less symmetrical, a little more asymmetric to what we're seeing here on that front elevation.
Right.
It's certainly not impossible. I'll leave it at that.
Okay, thanks. Those are my questions.
Ms. Anderson, questions?
Just to confirm, you are not required to have parking, correct? And you're offering 8 spots?
That is correct, if we were to pursue approval subject to the state
I see.
program.
So otherwise, you're required to have 8. Is that?
Yes, that's
Okay.
correct.
Thanks.
Okay. Is it possible with the setbacks on the front to incorporate a kind of a porch or stoop element and have some sort of columns coming down to support or covering?
I wish that it were, and I tried to make that happen. The reason it's not is that we have these 3 fruit trees. They aren't particularly attractive or interesting, but the street tree committee reviewed the project and felt it was important to retain them, and that they did not want to see them removed.
Okay.
So those are the limitations within which I was working.
All right, but that doesn't preclude you from creating some sort of porch-like feature.
Well, you're correct. Sorry, I didn't mean to misspeak. I mean, sure, we could have a small porch-like feature, and if I'm understanding your comment, something, say, that's limited to this area. Yes, that's possible.
Okay. Because right now you're showing that there's just a slope up from the sidewalk of some sort that goes directly into the front door. There's no vertical transition at all, right?
Yes, and that we will need an accessible threshold there at this unit. So a step up, I don't think will be feasible. But perhaps there's another way. If I'm define maybe better define the sense of entry, let's say, if that's what you're driving at.
Right, some sort of porch-like, stoop-like kind of feel to further enhance that pedestrian feel and connection to what is a little bit more traditional in that neighborhood. Okay. And then, do you have the photos of the adjacent development with you?
We do have them submitted. I don't believe that we have them loaded, but I'll be happy to ask Will to try to locate them as fast as he can.
One moment.
If he's not disorganized from his vacation.
Jeez, just completely discombobulated.
Great. If we could just see the photos of the property itself.
So this is the neighbor to the south. I don't know that we have many more detailed photos than that. That may be the best that we get.
I'm mainly interested in the existing development that's sort of the sister to this.
I understand. Okay, so you're seeing it in the back here. Let me find the better photos we have of that.
Okay.
I'm afraid that may be the only photo I have in this deck.
Okay, and the intent is to essentially match these details and.
It is very similar, treatment at the base, horizontal siding, the water line board here, similar eaves, exposed eave details. The guardrails are the same. The paint colors are essentially reversed.
Okay. Any other follow-up questions?
Yes, I have one.
Yeah.
Mr. Greer, isn't it, the existing condition is there is no sidewalk and curb on the street currently, but they do appear in your plans?
That is correct.
All right, thank you.
Okay, let's go to comments. So they're here looking for project design approval. So with that in mind, we could make our comments on that, or whether or not you feel it's appropriate or ready for PDA, and any other comments you have. Who would like to start?
I'll start, Chair Moore. I do feel that this is ready for project design approval. I think the cues taken from the existing building work quite well, especially the color palette which I normally don't care about all that much. With that in mind, I'm going to stifle myself about commenting about the windows. The doors that you've indicated on the plan are quite charming with the 6-light window. I would really like to see more of that similar charm in the windows with some sort of divided light, but I understand I'm capitulating here that in the effort to match the existing one, I can't make that argument really strongly. I would like to, and I made this comment before, I would like to see some access through the landscape at the front door, or especially to the side entry to the bike parking, because those poor plants are just going to get stomped on unless that walkway continues through the landscape bed out to the curb. You'd have to
Just
go
to-
to the landscape plan to
Gotcha.
really understand
Thank
that.
you. I would just like to understand that.
Yes, so you can see there's no way to get to the bike parking or to the front door without walking through the landscape median between the curb and the public side walkway.
And just because I think I might misunderstand, this is a bike parking.
Yes.
And we have a doorway to the paving
Yes.
here, and then we have the walkway here.
Right.
Is a concern that people want to shortcut it across the landscape? Or shortcut it here?
Across the median landscape, you pointed it.
Got it, thank you.
So in both of those cases, I think the stronger one's for the bike parking, but it could also accentuate the front door if that walkway were to continue out to the curb. Thank you. Those are all my comments.
Okay. Mr. Noon?
Nothing additional to add.
Vice Chair Six.
Yes, I resonate with Chair Moore's comments on the needing more oomph to the front entry, and perhaps because that's a uniquely different roof, that it would be look stronger as a shed roof. And maybe that because you have the conflict with those trees, perhaps the only above the door portion, that's a radical extended further corbelled thing that makes special that opening. And I see the walkway a little restricted. Maybe there's just 45 degrees and some cut off of the fence as the sidewalk meets the walkway. I think it'd be less important to match the back building, and would advocate for window cut-ups. And I think that's it. I think that it's a good project.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Anderson?
I could support PDA today. That's my comment.
Okay, short and sweet. My own comments are, the reason I wanted to see the photos of the adjacent development is that I think the elevations that is as presented are a little underwhelming. I think, and maybe it's just a particular vantage point of that drive court of the adjacent, where there's exterior walkway, you see the stair coming up, there's a little bit more going on there. Whereas this, it's all very internalized and everything is very kind of, simple. However, looking at that photo and seeing how all the details were resolved and built, I can see that, it's potentially, even though it appears very simple and mundane on the elevations, that it, perhaps it will, in the end, be more interesting than it appears. So, and I think some sort of effort to create a front porch of some sort would be really helpful for this front elevation. So, those are my comments.
Are we,
Anything else? Any other comments? Anyone want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion for project design approval with the following comments that the arrangement of the parts and the landscaping are very successful. The applicant should look at increasing the porch element along Figueroa, and there were suggestions of different roof forms in order to do that. The applicant shall provide a pathway interrupting the parkway to provide for bike and pedestrian access to the street. I'm going to put in, and we can discuss whether cut-ups on the window. I would put the cut-ups in. Well, I'm going to say that. I think the casement window should have casements proportioned to this type of style. Did I forget anything? I don't think so. Yeah, divided lights.
Okay, do we have a seconder?
I'll second.
All right, any discussion on that? Any additions?
Do we need to make findings on a PDA? All right. So we find that this project is compatible as following, that it's consistent with the guidelines of the location of the project within the city. It's compatible with the architecture character of the city and the neighborhood, given its residential character and materials. It is appropriate size, mass, bulk, and scale. And there are no adjacent landmarks or resources affected, historic resources affected. There are no public views affected. And there is adequate use of open space and landscaping.
Okay, do we want to read back the initial part of your motion before we?
Okay, so the motion is for project design approval with the following comments. The arrangement of the parts and landscaping are very successful. The applicant should look at increasing the porch element along Figueroa as the different roof forms suggested in order to do that. Reword that if that doesn't make sense. And then the applicant shall provide a pathway interrupting the parkway to provide for parking and pedestrian access to the street. The encasement
Provide for bike and pedestrian access. And the roof forms, you say that again. Let's just go back there and cut it right now.
the applicant should look at increasing the porch element along Figueroa.
That's enough.
That's enough? Okay. And then the last point is the encasement windows should have encasements proportioned to this type of style.
Mullions proportioned appropriate to the style.
And it's casement windows.
Casement windows.
And then when you're done with that edit, can we just hear the first couple sentences again?
The first 2 points?
Yeah.
Yeah. The arrangement of the parts and landscaping are very successful, is the first point. And the second point is the applicant should look at increasing the porch element along Figueroa.
Or the entry element.
So eliminate porch.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Is that acceptable to the
Yeah.
motion makers?
Yes.
Okay. Anything else? No? Okay, let's take our vote.
Chair Moore?
Yes.
Vice Chair Six?
Yes.
Board Member Anderson?
Yes.
Board Member Noon?
Yes.
Board Member Whalen?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you very much. And we do have the appeal period, or appeal process, as noted on the screen. All right. Okay, we are moving on to item number 5.
And I need to announce I have a conflict, so I have to step down.
Okay, thank you very much.
You just want to get warm.
Mullions. Divided lights.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, so we are on to item number 5. This is 220 North Lacumba Road. This is a continued item for in-progress review. No appealable decision will be made at this hearing, and we last saw this on October 31st. Do we have any comments from that time? Make sure there's... Okay. We're interested to see how the design resolves the elevational details, trim conditions, post conditions. Recommend finessing the parking photo and ventilation. Okay, so before we jump in, so as an in-progress review, we want to make sure this is focused, not just we're not all over the place. So if there's particular items that you want our feedback on, that would be what we want to really hit today, okay?
Sure.
And if you could introduce yourselves.
Great. Christine Perone, architect for the project.
Nicole Horn, Associate Principal at CJMLA Landscape Architect, and then we also have Arturo Zaragoza. I might bring him up, he has some samples.
Okay, thanks, welcome back.
Thank you.
Away.
So yeah, Chair, thank you for doing this in-progress review. We probably will be coming back to you for final in August, but it's always useful, I think, to come in and show you a handful of the changes that happened, kind of our in-progress detailing that we're doing, and that's mainly what we're going to focus on today, as well as we did bring you, both for landscape and architecture, some materials to just get an early peek at those. And I think this should be brief, not a lot of changes. Except that I have to scroll through a lot of pages, I'm afraid. Just to remind you, I think you probably remember this project. It's at La Cumbra and Villa Lucero.
We don't, yeah, let's skip
Skip
the
it.
intro.
You guys got
Go
it?
Straight to the
You
goodies,
got it.
okay?
Okay, let me go straight to my elevations here. What I'm doing here is showing it both in a black and white. Where's the zoom?
click and highlight.
Zoom in here. So I've got it both in black and white to clearly show the materials, and then the color shows you the color selections. So I'm just going to kind of briefly talk about this color. We've gone to the siding in a white, and that also is in a board and bat. We do still have the plaster that you had seen before in this kind of wheat color. And then we've kept the barn red here, and this is showing very dark, but I've got the actual color for the base plaster work. And what you can see here is a few minor changes from the prior design, where we've introduced, here at the end, you can see kind of a board and bat motif that goes to a siding, and that's all in the white. And here as well, we pick it up as siding and then a board and bat up here on the gable, just to add different materials and a little bit of interest there. We'd had a gray tone in the prior iteration and decided to simplify and brighten up the entire project. I think you were also very interested in seeing more of the detailing shown in elevation, and that's why I wanted to bring this to your attention in the black and white, because here you can see the trim surround. There's a sill and apron typical on all the windows, and a trim around all of the doors and entries. Everything's cased. Edge trim here on the corners, belly band here that you can see. So very traditional in its detailing. That's the.
Do you mind if we do this a little bit more informally? Can we, would it interrupt your presentation or your flow if we could ask questions?
Please go right ahead.
Okay. If you could remind us, if you scroll a little bit more over to the left, I guess. Yeah. So it's been a while, but wasn't there more of a corner condition where the windows were, or the balconies were a little bit more on the corner with the post?
They were a little bit more. You are remembering that correctly. And what we've had to do is, with the change in water heaters to being electric now, we had originally designed these as gas water heaters, which we could put up on the roof. We did need to locate those on the balconies, which then made these smaller openings that we've just cased as. So those are actually, you see the railings, and it's just a lining to the door beyond in the balcony. So it's reading more as an opening, a door opening.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Sorry, continue.
Okay. And that is still, I'm going to come down here, that is still the Santa Barbara sandstone that embellishes the main entry and some of those planter walls. And that had been the gray, and we decided it would just brighten it up with the white.
Are those in the same plane, the board and bat that's going to the siding?
No, they're out of plane, and I have an inspiration image I can show you that does this kind of juxtaposition of the two. So,
Yeah, I just couldn't remember.
yeah,
if they
they're
were-
out of plane, yeah. And in kind of simplifying the color palette, I just wanted to have a little bit of materiality difference.
To interrupt, the window trim at the colored siding, the cream and the red, those will be contrasting white.
Those will be contrasting white.
And then and obviously the white will not contrast on the white portions, correct?
Yeah, I wanted that white on white there.
Great.
And then the windows are going to be sage green. So it'll have this kind of bright poppy color.
Oh,
to
the
windows.
sash?
The sash of the windows.
Of the white? Or all of them?
Not all of them, and I can show you where, but when you see the white siding,
Yes.
it's the sage green window. When you see the wheat color
Wheat,
and the red, it's white.
Okay. Thank you.
And the same with the doors, yeah.
Same with, all right,
Yeah.
thanks.
What's your current thought on the size and dimensions of your board and bat? How wide are you going?
Right now, what they're showing is, I think it's a 3.5, and I'm making sure they're fairly thin. I think a 1/2 inch is what I'm thinking. There's those 1970s chunky ones that I'm not a big fan of. So it's a very traditional thin bat that I believe that's a 3.5 is what I'm showing there. And then I've contrasted it with that belly trim, which is a 5.5.
And what's on center? How far apart are the bats?
They're about 30 inches, playing a little, obviously responding a little bit to the architecture. I can show you on the other elevation where they also, they vary a bit. It's a little bit held to the panels. These will be hardy, cementitious, so we're going to be held to the panel widths as well. I believe those are 30, though.
Can we just continue asking questions to folks?
Go right ahead.
Several.
Yeah, if it's in this area, go ahead.
You mentioned the board and bat on the white. Was there a reason that you couldn't take the board and bat all the way down on the gable end on the east end?
The gable end.
Yeah, your white gable end. Scoot over.
Over here.
There you go. Yeah, bring that all the way
It
down.
can be. I just kind of, that's a look. That's just one more kind of farmhouse look when you do the board
Okay.
and bat up high at the gable and the siding. So I was just trying to create another level of interest, but I could
No,
be
no,
happy either way.
I love what you've done with that roof form, going the opposite. From before, it was all facing. I love what you've done with that massing on that very end.
Okay. How do I zoom
And
out?
I did ask Mr. Russell to pull up the previous
Oh, good.
iteration,
Yeah.
just so we could do a little compare and contrast.
Still on vacation.
Picking on Will.
Oh, that's okay. I fight back sometimes.
Hopefully this doesn't
It-
destroy
Well,
the
That's
computer.
why it's
No, that's
201.
okay. I don't know why that one's huge. Anyway, while we're doing that, so those are the windows. Those are aluminum wood clad. So good quality windows. I wanted to go with kind of a galvanized roof. It's okay. That is the red, which looks really brown in here in these lights. It's actually more of a very traditional barn red. That is the wheat color, the white.
City TV, would you be able to turn on the overhead camera and show the color samples in the middle of the table? Thank you.
Okay.
We might, actually, can we move them more over to
Sure.
middle? There we go. There we go. There we go.
Sorry, I was just trying to do something,
No, that's
two
okay.
things at once.
The camera had to swivel all the way around, so. And then this is the previous.
Oh,
version, so
great.
I think he wants to maybe look at these elevations.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you.
Try and artfully arrange them.
And the white windows only ever go with the barn red and the wheat color. So I wasn't that concerned about the difference in the whites because they're never seen together. Okay.
Thank you,
Do
City TV.
mind Just, sorry.
Oh, one more? Go ahead.
I was just going to ask the applicant, if we do have the previous elevations.
That's
Yeah.
right
and
up.
Is it possible to zoom in there and just, oops. show us the, kind of the broad brushstroke changes.
So one is that added detailing. You know, you can see the trim has been shown, the casing, everything like that has happened. This had been a vertical siding. I think you can kind of see that there.
More just massing and general roof form changes.
Nothing major has changed. This dorm,
The shed on the very east end.
that changed, yeah.
And the dormers versus the shed.
And then this went into 2 true dormers. I actually made those attic bedrooms, so those will be 2 true dormer windows in the revised, and then simplified this roof line and did not do this kind of shed dormer.
If I may, go ahead. You can't balance the dormers on the other side? Too busy, too
It
much?
got too busy. I did it at first, and I just thought it was too busy.
Okay.
But your feedback's welcome. It can be done. It just, they'd be false.
Okay.
And that's where you see it had been the gray, and the gray here, and I am actually, I think, much happier with the white. I don't think, we didn't need the one more color. Oops, wrong way. So just use that board and bat to create the interest. This building has stayed the same. And I think you can see it here. These have become the white siding beyond. And did you have both changed elevations, Will, by any chance?
I believe that was the only PDF I received.
Okay. This was supposed to be a transparency that showed that building in the foreground, and I wanted that corrected. But there were no significant changes on these elevations from the prior iteration, other than, again, it goes back to those balconies. Patios have become more door-like.
Those were the only plans I received today.
Oh, okay, thanks. So I think that was really the only major change that happened on this backside. And the north. This had been more siding, and I switched it to just, again, simplifying. This had been the gray, and that has become the white horizontal siding. And this has just become a simple plaster form. And that was done, one, just to simplify the material palette, but it did seem, again, we have a general contractor on board. I'm being asked to look at VA options, so there was a little bit of simplifying the palette back here. And I think given where it is, it's going to be behind dense oak trees. I think it's appropriate. So really, those are the major changes to the architecture. And then I wanted to just take there's a lot more elevations and sections, and but here's that kind of reference where it's the board and bat up against the siding. I kind of like that juxtaposition. And then here you can kind of see some of the references with the the horizontal siding and then the board and bat above. And just updated renderings. That corner, I think, reads better with the white. And my team put a lot more in here than I think we looked at some of these original details, but they show both plaster, the different kinds of siding, board and bat, or vertical siding, and it's got a hardy trim board around it, so it'll be proud about 1/8 of an inch, about right, of the wall material.
That's the door. Can you go to the window sheet
Sure.
next?
And here are the windows, so
Could I make a comment now? Okay, given that, and it's probably very for constructability, that the trim around the windows and the window and the siding are all very almost flush with each other by a lack of a half inch or whatever. And I realize that the window detail is a very costly, cost-sensitive thing. I wondered, certainly we can't look at recessing these windows to get shadow lines.
we could do that. I was just kind of approaching this in a very traditional way, a farmhouse way, and that's why I did it the way it was done.
Yeah. My concern is, we're getting a very flush look, and if the only thing that could happen is, see down below on the sill, if that sill could be a significant element and create a shadow line. When you look at the elevation right here on this sheet, it looks really skimpy.
I think that does too. So.
And I wondered if that could be the place where you project it and make it a healthy shadow line and give it a little dimensionality to the whole thing. If that would be enough and be still not an overly costly thing to do, rather than recess, that it would just give that a little bit of a depth and texture and shadow line to your windows throughout.
We can definitely look at that. And we can even look at recessing these a bit. Again, I was truly thinking, this is what they look like. They were flush. But I agree. I think the sill here is too thin. I would definitely. But they don't stick out that far. Traditionally, they just don't. You say it's like this fine balance of making sure they don't go too far. And I do try to make sure. That's why the elevations are here. It's really important that they have the ear.
Yep.
Things like that. But we can definitely look at that.
I'm just concerned to get a little more shadow and play in all of those windows.
Sure, we may be able, even
Myself.
if it's just pushing it back and doing one more piece of hardy, even an inch back, we might be able to do that.
However you arrive at it, I think that.
Okay. Absolutely.
Okay, any other details we want to look at? Is there an eave detail that we can see?
So here's the eave, and I have picture framed these. I noticed that a lot, especially with the board and bat, where the on the wall, both the eave and the rake are picture framed against the wall, which is this really nice kind of detail. Also with the T&G, just did this kind of very simple farmhouse kind of cut to a fascia board. I went back and forth on a half round or a D, and if you guys have a preference, but I ended up with the squared out gutter. The rake here as well, same thing.
The whole roof is metal.
Whole roof is metal, yeah. And I've had this updated. There's a better rake detail than this, and you'll see it finally. It doesn't have to return and have this kind of piece that makes that needlessly thick. That'll be updated. And then these are more kind of standard, kind of wall to roof details.
Well, if I may continue, can you go to your section at your balustrade? Yes. Can you blow that up?
Yeah.
Well, my first question is, are you sure you are going to be able to get your 200 pounds per square?
Yeah, it was the question I had for the person doing this detail.
Mhm. It might not.
Yeah. That is going to be looked at.
Okay, and perhaps one of the ways to do that is to span horizontally, but maybe that to your railing itself, your hand railing itself, maybe that could be wider.
Yeah,
to
I agree.
provide a shadow line, or
Yeah. I agree.
to help out that. It looks a little weak.
Mhm. I agree. And those will be, they're not called out here. Yeah, it is called a solid stock, but I had that same comment. I would like that to be wider.
Yeah.
So that needs to be like a 3, 2
And
and a half,
then
3.
if I have the floor, can we go to the main elevations? Yeah, the center one is good. And I know this is sensitive because we're not supposed to fool around with solar, but is there a way to, you're dancing here and taking out beautiful simple rectangulars of arrays with the vents,
Right.
the dormer vents. Is there another way to vent those so you can simplify your layouts of those?
That's why we're showing that, and yes, we're working on it.
And also, especially at the dormer roof, if those could be simple rectangles going up the extent of the slope on the side of the dormers rather than just underneath.
Mhm.
It just seems like there's a little more work there. It's a beautiful project, and these solar arrays will be visible from the street, so it would be nice to clean them up a little bit and figure that out.
We agree.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, anything else?
That's not true. I just wanted to show this is a true veneer that we're proposing, and just again how that's had to really think about. It's a much more different traditional barn sidings that sits on how it sits on that foundation, and it's in the images you saw. And that's it for the architecture.
Oh, one more question. You're doing a deck material for a poured deck material for your balconies and so forth?
For the balconies, those will be a fluid applied.
Yes.
But for the main courtyard, and Courtney and Arturo will address this, that's going to be concrete. We tried to upgrade that material.
Well, it's sitting right here. Are you confident, Ms. Perone, on the edging of that floor? If you zoom up right there, are you confident that you can have an elegant end to that poured waterproofing?
I can do what Dexatex is going to require of me.
Okay.
I think what we do need here is a trim board. And what we can do, and I've done on others, is I can do the trim board, and I'll take the flashing up and around and try to kerf it in so that I can get a clean edge there.
Yeah, no matter how you do it, I'm just concerned that we have this unarticulated ragged edge to that stuff, and it can be not complement your architecture.
Yes, I understand.
Okay.
Hi. You're just leaving. Nicole. I'm going to ask Arturo to come up too. He has some samples we can share with you. Oh, that's the heavy one. So this is the ground floor plan. You can see the trees here. Most of the exterior has all remained the same. We've taken care to make sure we can maintain the same amount of landscaping and trees that you saw previously on that North La Cumbra elevation. And then the main difference is in the courtyard. We've added like family zone here. So we've changed the programming of the courtyard. This is a little tot area. We've got a trike track. What you see in the dark green is synthetic turf. And so it provides an accessible route to this courtyard space, which is on podium, on grade, on podium here. This is a community room on the interior. And so we've added this exterior picnic spot. And then there's a little fence and gate here. There's some play elements. We'll show you that in the enlargement. And then this courtyard space has become like much more flexible and shared. And the idea is we have more temporary movable furnishings, more movable planters. So it could be rearranged for an event or something in this larger interior space. And then what Christine had mentioned, this speckly pattern is all concrete topping slab. And then the Dexatex would start out here in the corridors and be on the private patios. And then, did you put this?
We have them here, so the camera.
City TV,
Yeah.
would you be able to show?
Yeah, that's okay. I'll go to the next sheet.
Thank you.
So that's our permeable paver. That's a hydroflow paver, and I think a Summit Sunrise. It's a mix. It looks real red on that camera, but it's a mix of tan and beige and gray. There's like no red in it. And then next to that, on the sort of the lower side, is the sandpiper beige Dexflex color that we're looking at, the Dexatex, correct. And then next to that is the topping slab in a Mesa beige. And with the Dexflex, we have another sample too that's a different finish. So we're looking at a broom finish. It's that color, but a more textured finish. And then on the top, that's a planter. So we have a fiberglass planter for the podium, and that's correct. Yes, that's a color called Reed. It's off-white. Thank you. And when Christine was just showing her samples, she had two windows, like a sage green and a white, and I thought maybe we could do a sage green just based on her presentation. You know, it might be nice to have that. At first I was kind of afraid of green with the red barn, but I think maybe a softer sage green could be nice on the planters. So if we go back to the plans, this is our sample here recreated. One thing we're looking at in the concrete of this picnic area outside of the community room is doing some sort of fun impressions. The idea is it's family oriented. We were thinking about doing leaf patterns or maybe animal prints, going back to this sort of agrarian style and referencing maybe some, I don't know, barn animals, native plants. I think it could be really fun and whimsical. We're also looking at, here, I'll zoom in the children's area, in the synthetic turf, we have this mound in the middle. And then we're looking at maybe reusing some of the trees that we're going to be taking down, using those rounds or stumps as play elements. And then just to round out the materials, I've talked about, most of these colors, but in the On the podium courtyard, we've got a wood prefab planter. Everywhere you see a tree, and I'll show you the plan, that would be the wood planter, not the fiberglass planter. And then we've got this modular seating, and we're looking at a gray, not orange, for the steel. Actually, I'm going to show it to you on the planting plans, which is a little bit more colorful. So here you can see which are the planters within the podium. So where there's a tree and we've got different fruit trees and some native cercis, these would be the wood planters, 36 inches where each of the trees are. And then these are two larger olive trees that we're proposing so that this side of the courtyard just feels slightly different from this larger space here.
Sorry to interrupt. Are those larger trees on grade, or are they in planters also?
In planters, this break line right here is all on podium to
Okay.
the right. And then the perimeter, that's in grade. So we're planting 10 48-inch box oaks, and that's something we've been working out with our arborist and city staff, is just trying to come up with the right mix of oaks to replace the ones that we're removing, which are all really small along this property line.
So again, the larger, well, they're drawn different, much different than the other
Yes.
trees. They're still in the 30-inch box.
They're in a 36-inch box, yes, but they can get to a larger size because they're olive trees, and
The
the others
species.
are, species. The other species are small.
And you don't think that you needed a more leafy, broader tree in the triangular portion because it was in the way?
Not in the way. I think actually that this courtyard will get a lot of shade.
Okay.
I don't think we need more shade. I think we actually need more light. But because this area is narrow anyway, I thought it would be nice to have more of an enclosed, intimate feel.
Is there any disadvantage or limitations to the health and growth and size of the plants when they're in movable planters as opposed to a fixed planter? Yeah, all these planters out in the space are movable, correct?
Correct. They will be quite heavy, the ones with the olives especially, but they're really.
I'm sorry, the green squares are also planters, correct?
Correct, yes. So I don't imagine they'd move the ones with the trees.
Oh, yeah,
because it
I
would be
don't
heavy.
think so.
But they could relocate some of the other ones.
But there's no disadvantage or to the, as I say, the health, size, and so forth. What I'm thinking is should there be permanent planters like alternating along the lines of the balcony columns and so forth? And would a permanent, and still not be in the way of flexibility on the outside of that, they would be rimmed, that flexible outside, that flexible center space would not be limited if you fixed your planters along the columns of your, of the border. Would,
I don't think it would make a difference.
make a difference in the health or?
No, because the real determining factor is the depth. And we have a 36-inch depth. We're not going to get more significant trees unless we went to some like huge depth that we're
Not
not gonna be able to
particularly the trees, but the shrubbery planters. The trees I have no problem with, they won't move. But if you have some of your shrubbery planters permanently between the columns of the perimeter of that space, would that afford any more health and permanency and vitality to the plantings?
I don't
As
think-
opposed to have them flexible outside the space and being able to move around?
No, I don't think so, because I think that's, at this point, that's an operational issue. And these would be, really well maintained. People are going to be out there, the landscape maintenance team, on a regular basis, maintaining and replacing any plants that might not be doing well.
Okay, so if there's no difference, then I'm fine. That's good.
Mr. Whalen or Ms. Anderson, any questions?
I just commend Ms. Perone and her team on the changes that you've made. I think the board and batten changes are very appropriate. The colors, especially the white at the corner replacing the gray, perhaps this is the end of gray as a popular color. I think that also works to feature the deep red in very advantageous ways to your design. Thank you.
Thank you.
Questions, comments?
Yeah, I had a follow-up question on the roofing. So it's all standing seam and it's all the galvanized material?
That's right.
Everything. And there was no consideration to changing that up with the different, like the plaster gets a different roofing than the wood siding, like you did with the windows?
I don't think so. I don't think the project is large enough, and I'm really been concerned about, you can go too far, and I felt like I was actually starting to tailor back, and I think the roof being all consistent is kind of helps tie it back together again.
Okay. And then as far as my comments, I think the materiality and the detailing are, I think the materiality is appropriate and the detailing is going in the correct direction for the project. I actually prefer the previous forms on the east end and the instead of the dormers. I liked the single pitch, but that's just a personal preference. And with the fiberglass planters, I think it would be nice to introduce a second color with the one with the beige, the green and the beige. Those are my comments.
I really like the changes and what's happening now. I think that the dormers are very successful as opposed to the what would you call those? The shed forms. And I really like the idea that the white portions of the building, that the trim will disappear and it'll be slightly different than the contrasted trim on the colored portions. And I think I really compliment you with this very fine design, both landscape and architecture. Look forward to the finals, and I think you've heard my minor concerns of details earlier.
Could we put the elevations back up, particularly the La Cumbra elevation? I think my feelings about this particular elevation, I think the colors are successful. I think kind of the basic partie is successful. I preferred the previous iteration of this elevation with the larger openings on especially on the second floor outdoor spaces. I thought that it took, at least for me, it took some of the visual mass out of it. It was going to create a lot more shadow, a lot deeper shadow, and a lot more interest. This strikes me as a little bit more typical. And what I preferred about the last one was that it was, if you could flip over to that old elevation. For instance, in that the just below where it says solar height limit, that mass where you had a much larger, grander opening out to the street, it just feels better to me. And the same with those interior versions. I think that with your chosen materials would take this project from being just sort of the basic nail-on window feel and elevate it. And I agree with Ms. Anderson. I prefer these kind of oversized big windows with that shed form just because it was a little different and it didn't go too far down the road of being a farmhouse with dormers on it and this traditional thing. I felt that that was interesting, more interesting in resolution. So I'm sort of disappointed that those features were changed. So those are my comments. Anything else to add? So I don't know what you'd take away from that, because we had kind of divergent ideas.
It's all very, very helpful. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah. No, it was.
Okay.
So we also need to open up public comment just really briefly. But
Okay. We can open public comment for this item, please.
All right, thank you, Chair Moore. I'll go ahead and start with in-person public comment. So at this time, I have not received any speaker slips. If you do wish to speak in person, you can fill out a speaker slip by the back door. I don't see anyone moving to speak, so I'll go ahead and move to virtual public comment. If you wish to speak on Zoom at this time, you can raise your hand and I'll call on you. I don't see any hands raised on Zoom, and we did not receive any written correspondence for this item, so I'll turn it back over to you, Chair Moore.
Okay, we can close public comment. So, to the applicant, those are our comments. If you need any clarification, we can spend a few minutes potentially on that.
I don't think I do. I think that's pretty consistent, and it's really the dormer, the shed versus the more traditional. And I think I can respond to that when I return. It's a reality to an affordable housing project and plate heights and some other kind of constructability issues. I loved the shed dormers myself. And then I think I will definitely study the balconies. I don't disagree with that, and see if there's some way to kind of get some of that feeling back. So I appreciate the comments.
Okay. All right. Everyone happy with what they've said? Good. Okay. Well, thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, and with that, we can adjourn for the evening.
thank you very much.
Have a good night.